So welcome to today's Cabinet. Welcome Cabinet members, councillors, members of the public. As usual, agenda papers and public forum submissions are available on the council's website. Can I please draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure, which is outlined on the agenda and currently being displayed on the screen. Just to let you know, the meeting is being webcast, so please can I remind everyone to speak into the microphone to ensure you can be clearly heard. Members of the public joining us online. Agenda item 2, public forum. This is a reminder that statements and questions will be taken at the time the relevant agenda item is discussed. I'll reply to any questions or ask the relevant cabinet member to respond at that time. Agenda item 3, apologies for absence. We have apologies from Asher, Tom, no more. Oh, Nicola as well. So thank you for those apologies. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Any interests declared will be noted by our officers. So I think we're all covered. I think Tim, you're aware of everything that needs to be aware of. Matters referred for consideration by scrutiny or full council. There are no matters referred from scrutiny or full council at this time. Agenda item 6, reports from scrutiny commissions. No reports from scrutiny have been received. Agenda item 7, chair's business. I'll just share a few things with you. The first is actually the reason for Asher's. Well, let me start actually with Tom. My chair's business is Tom, first of all. Tom's absence, he's on paternity leave. He was just upstairs with his brand new baby. I remember the days. So he's doing the tour. First outing for the baby, and he comes to City Hall. I think that says that's a fine choice of destination. I've just sent him over to the Cathedral Garden, walled in. If you've never been there, it's absolutely fantastic. Wind protected and a sun trap. So I think they've gone over there now. Much better than being on our wing of the building. Agenda item, Asher's absence. Asher's actually in Bordeaux, which is one of our twin cities. And certainly post-Brexit, it is really important that we maintain our connections with our European neighbours. We are we're a main city, and when we look at the world fragmenting at this time, that relationship between Bristol, Bordeaux, and Hanover is a triangle of relationships that we must protect and invest in. It's actually the 75th anniversary of this relationship this year. And also, actually, this visit was part of the Bristol-Bordeaux Slavery Legacy Collaboration, where our two cities talked about how we understand and engage with our respective slaving histories as cities. And these are the kind of things that are not often fashionable, but we do know that when they're not dealt with, they bubble up in some form or at some point in the public consciousness, although for many people they're an ongoing issue. It's just that not everyone has to deal with that. And along with Asher, there's a Bristol delegation including Professor Olivet Otelli from the University of Bristol, Sado Jerde from Black Southwest Network, and Dr. Marinique Gournay. Congratulations to Tom and on that. I also just want to take this cabinet meeting to pay tribute to Councillor Don Davis, who's the leader of North Somerset, who was the leader of North Somerset, who is stepping down. Don's I find Don to be a straight shooter and a good guy who looked out for the interests of North Somerset, did his best for the area, and he will be missed in that role. We welcome North Somerset's new leader, Councillor Steve Bridger, to his role. We look forward to working with Steve on our regional issues, our crises, our challenges around housing numbers, flood defence, transport, decarbonisation, and as part of our joint committee for the West of England, but also as our regional presence within the Western Gateway, which I think is one of the most exciting vehicles we have. Not that necessarily it is breaking down any doors, but it's a very interesting and it's a collaboration that's full of possibility. This afternoon also, just to acknowledge, we had, the Queen's speech, setting out the legislative agenda for the next parliamentary session. First thing I'll just say was levelling up was obviously a prominent piece of legislation, being discussed. There is no substitution for finance and adequate funding. For all the talk of levelling up, what we found is a collection of slogans that the government are trying to give meaning to. We want them to give meaning to it, but we want it to be real meaning, a meaning of substance. It must, levelling up, we've repeatedly said to government, we must respect the geographical inequalities in the UK. The north-south divide is real. But at the same time, we must recognise that people are involved here. And there are some groups of people who get left behind wherever they are in the geography of the UK. And if it does not have that nuance in it of doing geography, both geography and people groups, not only will we leave behind pockets of deprivation in the south of the country, and not only will we miss opportunities to invest in, in places that can actually drive the UK economy forward in the south, but we could end up in a situation in which the north is supported to grow, but those people groups who get left behind wherever they are will be left behind in the north as well. So a little bit of nuance will go, a very long way. I'd also just say clearly, it doesn't feel at this moment, and I think a fuller piece of analysis is obviously to come as the day goes on. It doesn't feel it's itching where we are all scratching. Our priorities at the moment, for example, is the cost of living crisis, and yet we're going to expend precious time, on the policing bill, and not least, which concerns us, the Channel 4 bill, privatisation of Channel 4. That's a fight that doesn't need to happen. It's going to take up legal time. It's going to take up officer time, and and it's not something that's being asked for by us as one of the new hubs of Channel 4, and it's not being asked for by our independent production companies, whom Channel 4 is there to help propel along through their commissioning, and which is a major employer in the city, and whom we are currently working with to make so much more inclusive. It isn't really helping us tackle the challenges we face on a day-to-day basis of, around those underlying drivers of inequality that are hitting us right now, namely coming through COVID, how the poorest and most marginalised have been hit first and hardest, and are least well placed to benefit from any upturn when it comes. So we recognise, the Renters Reform Bill, there's potential in that, but we have concerns about the extent to which declarations in Westminster actually are informed and understood and then applied in a way that are useful to us as city leaders around the UK. Let me move on now to agenda item 8, Adult Social Care In-House Rehabilitation Service Review, South Bristol Rehab Centre. And I'm going to ask Helen Holland to introduce this report.
Thanks very much, Marvin. And you will recall that in January we had the first report about this issue, and we amended the decision that was taken in January to bring this back so that a formal decision would be taken about the issue at Cabinet. And I'm going to do what I did in January and start with saying that we absolutely recognise that this has been a very unsettling period for our staff, and the decision isn't anything to do with the quality of the service that they have been giving, which has been fantastic and has been recognised by the CQC as a good service. And we know, and I've met many of the staff up in the public gallery today, and I thank you again for coming today. We know that you've been working really hard, and you've worked very hard, particularly during the pandemic. And I regret, and I'm sure colleagues do as well, the heartache really that this has caused people in the staff while you've been waiting for the decision. But just to remind colleagues that the decision first of all came, or the proposal first of all came from Coroner, who approached the City Council about 2Ping the staff over into South Bristol Hospital, where the rehab is now provided. And that was a recognition of the skills of this particular staff cohort. So I think that was a tick in the box, if you like, about the value of those staff. Bristol's very unusual in still providing any rehab services in-house. It's not something that we have a statutory responsibility to do, and most of the other local authorities, certainly any that I've been able to talk to, closed any such services down a long time ago. Again, that isn't to say that the services that have been provided at South Bristol haven't been of quality, because they have. And actually, when the centre was built, it was seen as a very innovative sort of place. However, we can't afford, in the budget situation that we're in, to do things that we don't have to do. And there's a saving which will accrue to this council. We won't get the full year effect of the saving until year 23-24, partly because of the delay that it's taken for us to work through this with Coroner and with other partners. But nevertheless, that saving of £500,000 is an important one. I think the other thing I want to say, and I'll say more when Zoe, and Chris ask their questions, is that rehab into a rehab centre is not the only route for people who are coming out of hospital. So we recognise that the services are for people who have more acuity, is the word that they use in the health service. So whose needs are still greater when they leave hospital. And so a semi-hospital environment is the right place for those people. And we've got our own service, and the CCG, Integrated Care System, as will be, buy into that as well, of providing support for people who leave hospital at home. And I'm sure that everybody would agree that that's the best option if you are fit to go home, even if you need some support in the short term, that's the best thing to do. Now, as I say, I know that this has caused a lot of heartache for the staff, but we started with the best principles, which was that we wanted to preserve those jobs and those skills in the health and social care environment in Bristol. And we wanted, if people wanted to, for them to be 2P'd over. That isn't now on the table any longer. Coroner's position has changed. They've been able to open all of the beds at South Bristol Hospital, which they hadn't when they approached us back last summer. There's less use of agency staff, and they are now staffing up. But nevertheless, if there are people, and we know that there are some, only a few at the moment, some people who do want to take that option, which continues their career in health and social care and gives them all of the benefits of working in a public body, that some people will take that option. And Coroner have put forward a what they call a light touch recruitment process. So I think some people have already been over to have a look at how things are run at South Bristol Community Hospital, and some people are going to take that option. The closure will mean, obviously, that we'll go into the agenda for change process for people. So we will be putting people into the redeployment pool and hopefully be able to retain those skills in other settings within South Bristol, if possible, and if that's what suits people, because we understand that, jobs right on the other side of the city won't be a suitable option for people. But there are some vacancies in similar work around, and we'd definitely be looking at that. And obviously, once this decision has been made, much more individualised, one-to-one working with the staff about what the options are that they want to take will come forward as we take this through. So I'm sorry to have given a long presentation, but I just think it's really, really important that we acknowledge the value of this staff cohort. We hope that people will stay in the health and social care world, because God knows there are enough vacancies. I think it's 100,000 across the country in social care, and we need those skills. And I want to apologise for the way that you feel that you've been treated, and I know that it meant a lot to you when Marvin and I came out to the centre to talk to you individually, and I regret that you hadn't been able to have that kind of contact from senior managers before. Not all our doing, but I think there's lessons to be learned on all sides actually about how this has gone through, and we'll be taking those lessons forward. So I'm sorry it's taken me a long time to present the report, Marvin, but I hope you understand why.
No, absolutely. So we have received 3 public forum questions and 2 statements on this report. The first statement is from Rowena Hayward, GMB. So Rowena, hi, you all right? So Rowena, you got a minute. I'll wave a hand with 10 seconds, okay? No, I'm not starting now. Not yet. Can you put the mic up? Directly up close.
Is that better?
There you go.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. First and foremost, what we would like to do on behalf of GMB, and I'm sure on behalf of the Cabinet, is to pay tribute to the South Bristol Rehab staff, some of whom are here today. And I think it's to their credit that they've shown both tenacity, pragmatism and dignity throughout this whole process. I could say something, but I won't. They are valued staff, and that is why GMB is actually asking Cabinet to look at voluntary redundancy before going through the management of change policy process, because these staff have worked tirelessly both throughout COVID and throughout this very, very difficult situation when they've been really unclear as to what was going to happen about their future. Helen, I think you said about lessons learned, and obviously you will see from our statement, GMB is very keen that we do have that opportunity for lessons learned. Because what we didn't do, and what the council didn't do, is actually talk to these staff, talk to the very people at the very beginning, to actually ask them how they felt and what would be the best possible outcome. I think what both yourself and Marvin realised when you came up to South Bristol was the fact that these people, that these staff, these predominantly women workers, fully understand what the constraints are for the council. And so treat them with dignity, treat them with respect, and please listen to them in the future. It's really great that we now have options. They have options. What we're asking for is voluntary redundancy for those who feel that they wish to leave the council. Give them that.
Thank you, Rowena. So we have a second statement from Tom Merchant, Unison.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Hi, yeah, I'm speaking up for East Bristol Rehab rather than South Bristol Rehab. I think South Bristol Rehab was a bit of a fire sale. I think what we had was a situation where people were, and people hate me saying this, but where you take a department, you're taking staff and giving them to somebody else, which is just humiliating. But I would like to speak up. That's a fire sale. That's over. But East Bristol isn't. In the report back for in-house rehab, you mentioned that there is a consensus developing that we no longer provide these in-house services. I would like to speak up for those in-house services. East Bristol is a much better building with better facilities.
Just 15 seconds, Tom.
Okay, much better facilities. I would like the opportunity to talk further about what options we have for the building and the staff.
Thank you. So let's go on to our questions now. And the first question is from Councillor Jackson. Chris?
Yeah, thank you very much for the reply. I've got one supplementary, and it is reference to what Rowena said. Has voluntary redundancy been offered to any of the staff?
It hasn't at this stage of the process.
Do I get another one? Will it be offered?
Just one second. I'm just working out the orders here, Chris. With the... Yeah, I just want to stick to the structure here. That if that was just supplementary, it was just supplementary. But we can pick up with you outside. We know what your question is, all right?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, yeah. Okay, next question is from Councillor Goodman.
Hiya. I can't see the answers to my questions, actually, so do you mind? I couldn't see them on the website. Have they been given?
No, we don't post them till after the meeting.
Okay, all right, yeah. So my question was going to be the same as Chris, actually. Will you be offering voluntary redundancy rather than putting people through redeployment, given that...
Sorry, can I just check? So
yeah.
The questions I have was how many rehabilitation beds are there?
Yeah.
Are you changing your questions?
No, I'm following up on that question. So.
All right, so this is yours.
Do you want the answer to the beds question?
Yes, yeah.
Do you want the answer? You want the answer to your question?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Can I have the answer to the questions and then I can ask more? Yeah.
Okay, so of the 17 beds at South Bristol, the average occupancy is around 10 beds at the moment. And since we've been doing this work, Coroner have increased their capacity at South Bristol Community Hospital by 7 beds from 43 to 50. East Bristol Rehab and Tom, this report doesn't talk about East Bristol, and we're very happy to have a conversation with you about the future of East Bristol, absorbing some of those lessons learned about how South Bristol has gone. So in South Bristol, in East Bristol, sorry, it's 16 beds, which is running at an occupancy of 10 or so normally. So there's a further 6 available there because the facilities are more modern there and better. And as I've already said, some people are transferred to the rehab centres who would have gone home, and with more capacity in the Home First service, we'd hope that more people will be able to go home, as it says on the tin, Home First, and get the support at home. So the kind of needs have changed, but that's the answer about the capacity.
So you had 2 questions, you get 1 supplementary per question.
Yeah.
Okay.
But can I have 2 across both of them? Yeah. Or do I have to ask them after each one?
It should be 1 for each so they can be related to the original question.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can do a supplementary now and then go to your second question and then do a supplementary.
Okay, yeah, so given that and the statements that have been made about East Bristol in that, I know the report isn't about East Bristol, but can you give assurance that you will consult staff properly in East Bristol, let them know at the earliest opportunity about what your plans are in terms of those beds, so that both patients using those and staff working there are able to put their thoughts in and not feel like a decision's been made based on what Coroner want rather than what's in the best interest of the people of Bristol?
Well, I've already said that we will be doing that, and the future of East Bristol has not been decided yet, and the circumstances will be completely different because for reasons that, we don't like them, but we kind of understand where this came from, because this was an approach by Coroner about South Bristol in the first place. The circumstances about what we could and what we couldn't say to staff were different, but I think I've already said that the lessons learned piece is a really important one, and we'll be taking that forward onto East Bristol. And like Tom, you won't find a greater advocate than me for in-house services, and that's why we're putting so much effort into things like the community meals service, because that is a service that is brilliant and has saved lives undoubtedly during the pandemic. So, the in-house services are very important to the picture overall of health and social care in Bristol.
Do you have your second question?
Yeah. So
please go ahead.
Helen, have you got the answer to question 2? which is how many Bristol City Council staff currently work at the 2 rehabilitation centres and how many Coroner and other staff.
Hang on a minute. Sorry, got lots of different notes here. Just give me a minute and I'll... Have you got it on the Mayor's script? Is that included? Could you? Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we shared information on this. So at South Bristol Rehabilitation Centre, there are currently 40 employees, of which 28 are care staff. Coroner provide therapy and nursing input to the service as required. 2 occupational therapists, 3 physiotherapists, and 1 associate practitioner. East Bristol, there are currently 35 employees at East Bristol Rehab Centre, of which 26 are care staff. Again, therapy and nursing input is provided by Coroner as required. 3 occupational therapists, 2 physiotherapists, 1.5 FTE nurses, and 2 associate practitioners. Do you have a supplementary?
All right, not a supplementary, but first of all, for clarification, could you say how many of those were actually Bristol employees and how many Coroner? That's a clarification, not a supplementary.
Do you want me to? I've got the right page here now. When you see the written answer, you'll see that it's broken down into which one's a council and which one is Coroner. So rather than read it out again, if that's okay, you can see it in the written answer.
Yeah, it was there.
Yeah.
So South Bristol, 40 employees, of which 28 are care staff, and then Coroner, and then you add up the numbers of those people supplied. Your supplementary?
Yeah. So will voluntary redundancy be offered as rather than putting people through redeployment, given how people's futures have been up in the air for quite a long time?
Well, I if you don't mind me saying so, the link between that and your first question is tenuous, but I'll answer it anyway. And I've said this to the union reps and to the staff, that to be put in a position where the trade unions are asking us to make people redundant is quite unusual. So
offering voluntary redundancy is different.
Could you just
from
not
making
interrupt,
redundant.
please? Could you just, once you've done the question and the supplementary, if you could just let the answer go, and then we'll keep ordering the meeting.
So we want to seek to avoid redundancy and to redeploy as many people as possible. And we will be consulting on the unions now that this, well, assuming this decision is made in a few moments. Once we've made the decision, then the unions and the staff will be consulted with on the measures that, as we take the closure forward. And protecting employment, and especially in an area like health and social care, is absolutely key for me. So I want to retain the skills of those staff, and if that can be within the council or within Coroner, which is an NHS body, then that's what I want to do.
Thanks very much. I would just say as well, this is one of those areas in which we actually need local councillors to be fully engaged. Helen and I went up to meet people as thanks to Rowena, I would say, actually, bringing this to attention. But it would have been great if local councillors as well were on top of the local issues and raising these with us directly themselves, rather than coming after the fact.
Can I come in on that, Marvin? I've met with the staff.
Yeah, well, you as well, Chris. You've raised it as well. So
I've raised it in here. So we are on top of it, and we have been keeping up to date with it.
Thank you. Okay. So let me open it up to any other Cabinet members who would like to comment on this item. Okay, well, thanks for that. Helen, let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendation as set out in the report.
Okay, so on to agenda item 9, recommissioning of BNSSG, contract for provision of sexual health services. And Ellie, you're going to bring this item.
Thank you. This is to approve the re-procurement of sexual health services for the Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire region, which will commence in April 2024. In 2017, BNSSG jointly commissioned a new integrated sexual health service in order to collaborate and improve efficiency. And this ties in well with the 2021 Health and Care Bill that calls for closer collaboration between the NHS, local authorities and care providers in order to provide joined-up care. As the partner with the largest population and greatest inequalities in sexual health, Bristol are the lead commissioner for this work, which includes sexual health promotion and prevention, contraception, sexually transmitted infection testing and treatment, psychosexual counselling, HIV prevention, pregnancy testing and termination, as well as many others. As part of the commissioning process, BCC will be leading on an in-depth BNSSG-wide sexual health needs assessment due for completion in autumn of this year. This will look at sexual health provision and inequalities in order to identify gaps and recommendations for commissioning. Crucially, this is to acknowledge that sexual health problems are not equally distributed within the area, and this will enable the BNSSG steering group to collaborate to improve equitable health outcomes. Thank you.
So we've had no public forum for this item. Any other Cabinet members wish to comment? Okay, so let me hand back to you now, Ellie, to take the decision which I support and which will be displayed on the screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. So on to agenda item 10, introducing drug safety testing in Bristol. Ellie, this is with you again.
Thank you. Bristol is leading the way with a progressive drug safety checking service that shows our ambition to combat drug-related deaths and hospital admissions in our city with this proactive and preventative public health service. Once a month, Bristol residents who are contemplating taking drugs will be able to confidentially take them to a pop-up lab and get them tested for purity, toxins and unexpected substances. This free service will also provide a tailored healthcare conversation which aims to help people understand what is contained in the drugs they purchased so they can make informed decisions and fully consider the risks associated with drug use. The service is targeting drug use in the nighttime economy and also some of Bristol's festivals, and is in response to pilots that have evidence that drug testing services result in a reduction in drug use, polydrug use and drug-related medical incidents. Bristol has a higher than average number of drug-related deaths both regionally and nationally, and so as the first city in the UK to offer this potentially life-saving service, we are tackling this problem head-on. This is not about condoning drug use, this is about reducing harm and risk in environments where we know drugs are being used. This is about keeping people safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. So we've had two public forum questions, no statements on this report. Both questions are from Councillor Bennett. So, Marley?
Thank you, Marvin, and thank you, Ellie, for bringing this forward. We know we've got serious problems with drug deaths and drug-related harm. We only need to look at the number of incidents that occurred last summer when there were a number of deaths and hospitalisations in a very short space of time to see the problem. So I'm really pleased to see Bristol City Council leading the way and taking this public health evidence-based approach, and I hope it'll be successful. It's good also that the Home Office have given us the licence for that. It's slightly surprising to me. But one of the questions is, my first question is about how we advertise this service. Both, we want to make sure we get the right uptake, people engaging with it, but also ensuring that we advertise in the way that's appropriate. I'm just wondering sort of if we've thought about how we're going to do that and how we're going to, tell people, people who are considering using drugs, who might be, as part of the nighttime economy, that this service is available.
Yeah, thank you, Marley. We really want this service to have a good uptake, and so early engagement with BCC External Comms is key. We'll be issuing a joint proactive press release with our delivery partner, The Loop, with details on how to access it and how to access Roads, which is the recovery-oriented alcohol and drug service. And Roads providers have really long-established relationships with local colleges and universities and also the nighttime economy. So they have a really good network of people to help push out the service further. There'll be also an accessible facts card, which will be widely available with the 5 key things people need to know about the service, and also a social media campaign on platforms such as TikTok and Instagram and Facebook to help heighten awareness as well. But if you've got other potential avenues that you think that we should be exploring, please get in touch.
Supplementary, Marley?
Thank you. I'll move straight on to my second question, if that's right. And you'll recall, Marvin and Ellie, that I asked previously about safe drug consumption rooms as, part of the approach to that sort of public health approach to dealing with drugs. And at the time, the answer from the Home Office was that they wouldn't grant us the licence to trial that. And it's encouraging to see that they've now given us a licence for drugs check-in services. I'm just wondering if these conversations with the Home Office are ongoing about other steps we might be able to take to tackle drug deaths and drug hospitalisations, including safe consumption rooms.
Yeah, we didn't get a good response last time, but it's certainly a conversation we can revisit. And now that we've got this going, it feels like there's a new avenue for that to be explored again. So yeah, I'd be keen to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marley. I mean, it's one of those areas, whenever we have these kind of programs where we look for counsellors to, help make sure people are aware. So if it is something you've raised before, if it's something you have a particular interest in, let's have a chat about, working together on it, and, along with Ellie, and make sure that, this is as best as it can be for people across the city. It'd be great to work with you on that. Okay, so we've had no other public forum. Any Cabinet members to speak to this? Craig, Helen?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Helen. Only to quick. So I lost a couple of friends to drug-related deaths from school friends, and so I know firsthand that it's not just the pain that it causes the kind of immediate family, but also the whole community actually. And so I think it's great to see that we're leaving on this, and that it's a really hugely important piece of work. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Yeah, I also welcome it very much so, and follows on from what Marley said. Really, it's about those messages and how to get those out there, and that in some communities you need to think about how that message is communicated. So there are, obviously in Hartcliffe and Withywood we've got Hawkspring, which is fantastic addiction, drug and alcohol services, and works with young people and peer support, and to make sure that you're engaging with organisations like Hawkspring and others across the city that can get that message out, because sometimes it's the city centre is a long way away for people in those communities whose lives are already disrupted.
Okay, thank you very much for both. So let me hand back to you now, Ellie, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. On to agenda item 11, book supply contract. Ellie, this is with you again.
So this paper is to approve the procurement of a new book supply contract from October of this year for 3 years to the value of 2.1 million. Our current book supply contract expires in September, and this will ensure continuity in the supply of books that our 27 libraries provide to children and adults in Bristol. The pandemic severely affected the library service and those who use it. We only need to look at book lending figures to see that. In the 2 years before the pandemic, book loans were around 1.5 million per year, and in 2020 to 2021 they were just 172,000, a stark difference. With all the conversations myself and the Cabinet and the Mayor are having with community workers, it is clear that hubs like libraries will be an asset through the coming winter, providing a warm place for families and people of all ages to discover or rediscover a love of books, and this supply contract will ensure that our stock is up to date, relevant and of high quality. I'm proud to be part of a Labour administration that has fought to keep our libraries open despite the pressures of austerity. I'm a member of the new Friends of Hillfields Library Group. We just became constituted on Saturday, and our driving motivation is to create a resilient, valued and much used library for all, which is of course the ethos for the whole library service, and one which will continue to be a welcoming environment for anyone who needs it.
Thank you, Ellie. People have been passionate about libraries over the years, but we've had no public forum on this report. Do any Cabinet members wish to comment on this? When I'd just say this is all about the hard work that happens behind the scenes to keep our libraries relevant, up-to-date, functioning, isn't it? That often doesn't get much attention, but no, it's absolutely essential. So thank you for the work you've done on this, and let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Okay, agenda item 12, Gaol, Ferry, Footbridge, full closure for complete bridge refurbishment commencing in early June 2022. Don, you're bringing this report.
Thanks, Marvin. Gaol Ferry Bridge is a really important footbridge connecting Coronation Road by St Paul's Church over the New Cut to Cumberland Road and Wapping Wharf. The structure is almost 90 years old and now needs substantial repair after inspections. The planned works will include replacing corroded and rotten structural steel beams, as well as replacing the bridge decking and repairing some stonework. We'll also be repainting the bridge. I'm aware of the concerns of people who will be inconvenienced while this is undertaken, as well as the nearby traders. I've met with them several times already to keep them updated. The report has set out the diversion, and I know there are some further details about it coming up, some detailed questions about it coming up. We've explored the possibility of a temporary bridge. This is physically challenging given the span and extreme tidal range. The paper has more detail about the constraints. Also worth knowing is that the estimates suggested it would cost almost as much as the entire project itself. So our priority is to make sure the works are done safely and correctly, but as quickly as possible to reopen as soon as we can. We're expecting 6 months, but we can't be certain until we're able to get in close under the span to see the scale of work. We're investigating to get on top of decades of neglect of the city's. We're investing to get on top of decades of neglect of the city's infrastructure. This is the first in a £15 million programme of repairs to 5 other bridges over the next 5 years. Vauxhall Bridge, Langton Street Bridge, Spark Evans Park Bridge, Bedminster Bridge and Bath Bridges. All 6 bridges are busy strategic routes into the city centre used by thousands of people each day, and so it's vital we maintain them properly. I'm sure Cabinet colleagues will agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. So we've received 10 public forum questions and 3 statements on this report. First statement's from Dave Redgewar.
Yeah.
Dave was here?
Yeah, he's here.
Oh, right. Hi, Dave. You all right?
Yes.
So, Dave, you've got 1 minute.
I'll be very quick. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the issue we just want to make is that these bridges are very important to disabled people. Crossing the river and into the harbour area should be fully accessible, and we're extremely concerned that works are carried out that actually some of these bridges are not fully accessible at present, and we hope any money that's coming through the City Regional Transport Fund from the Metro Mayor actually makes these bridges fully accessible into the harbour, which is not just, it's an international harbour, big tourist attraction, and also fully accessible into the ferry network. So we'd ask that this is fully investigated to make sure that we can access properly the system and make sure that diversionary routes are fully accessible. In line, Marvin, with the Cities Equality Policy, Cities Equalities Forum, the Bristol Transport Board, and the work by the Metro Mayor on Equalities as well.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that, you know, as ever. So the second statement is from Councillor Hussain, who's not here. Councillor Dyer, Tony.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Alexander. First of all, I'd just like to say we very much support the investment. As Don said in his statement, it's long overdue. We also like to express our thanks for the officers who have been keeping us informed and up to date, which has allowed us to also keep our residents as up to date as we've been able to. The main crux of my statement is that as we look over this long-term period to repair the existing bridges that exist across the New Cut, it's the awareness that north-south crossings have always been a pinch point between the south of the city and the city centre and further afield. And it's basically what we would like to see is a review of where we can provide additional capacity for extra crossing points We did have a situation where there were approved plans for a bridge near Camden Road, and they were also looking at another bridge near White House Street or Lantern Road. So increasing the capacity so that we can help and enable the active travel that we are so keen to encourage. Thank you.
Well, I don't think I'm going to say this very often, but I gave you 20 seconds and you actually got that from Dave Redwell, who came in at 40 seconds. So we're still on time. Thank you very much, Dave, to Tony. Okay, next on to our public forum questions. First two questions from Bethan Grant, who's not attending, and she'll receive a written response. The next two questions are for Councillor Townsend. So, Councillor Townsend, your first question, please.
Yeah, thank you. So my first question is about segregated routes whilst the bridge is closed. And I particularly it's been emphasised with us the importance of separating cyclists and pedestrians.
Yes, sorry, what's the question?
Yeah, can you confirm that there will be segregated, when the diversions are put in place, pedestrians and cyclists will be separated?
No, they won't.
They won't, okay.
Do you have a supplementary?
No, just the second question, if that's okay.
Right.
So it's about the signage, because when the Malago Road was closed, there were some issues around signage not being there on the initial week or so. I'm just wondering whether, well, I'm kind of encouraging transport officers and yourselves to make sure that the signage is there beforehand so that people can see where those routes are, because when the Malago Road was closed, for probably the best part of a week and a half,
Right.
it was,
Can we just
there was some real issues with it.
So will there be signage?
Before you
Before
close
it
the
happens.
bridge.
There will be signage, and I've met with the Wapping Wharf traders on, I think, 5 occasions so far. The last of those was this morning. So we've discussed lots of signage, including signage for their businesses. We've got a meeting coming up between the Wapping Wharf traders and also our economic development team to ensure that the traders have all got access to every possible grant and support with getting their business rates correct, given the challenges that they will face. As regards how people will travel with the diversions, there is only so much space and we have to come up with the absolute best thing. We're looking at a possibility of e-scooters being placed somewhere nearby. We're looking at the locations of e-bikes and every possible thing that we can do. And I shall continue that discussion with Wapping Wharf traders, and we'll do the best we can.
Sorry,
Okay, do you have a supplementary, Councillor Townsend? All right, thank you. Let me go to Dave Redwell now, please. So, Dave, you have 2 questions. Your first question? Can you hold the mic a bit closer? Or... No, that's not working.
Hello?
There you go. You're on now.
Yeah, this is from Gordon Richardson and myself, most members of the Bristol Transport Board. And our concerns really about the diversionary routes for disabled people being fully signposted and fully available. And we make the point also that crossing the bridge also allows us access to the Metro bus and also to the accessible ferry terminals. So what accessible routes are being put in place for disabled people? The harbour is the heart of Bristol, and from the south of the city we should be able to access it. So just want to know what officers are working on this, what consultation is going to happen with the disabled and equalities groups, and what actually planned routes or alternatives are being put in place. That may involve bus stops or bus infrastructure as well.
Vauxhall Bridge is an accessible bridge. So that will be I believe it is accessible. So we've certainly done a lot of work on it, and I'll pick it up with officers as to the exact details. But we'll do our absolute best. It's going to be challenging, and all of those bridges are going to be challenging actually, because you know, there isn't a very close alternative. We've looked at a Bailey Bridge. We've had that discussion. It would cost about £1 million. It's a span of 57 metres. We're looking at extending the working day, but actually one of the problems with that is that this work is very dangerous, and so you would then have to have extra management to cover it. We've actually got to have a safety ship boat underneath because people are over the tidal water. We also can't drop any paint in the water because of the Environment Agency obviously wouldn't want the old lead paint in the water. So there are many, many complications with this, and as you point out, there are no close alternatives to it. So the work is ongoing. Work's ongoing on that. We will do our absolute best.
Don.
Yeah, sorry.
Do you have a supplementary, Dave?
I suppose my supplementary would be, could the officers please consult with the Bristol Transport Board over this issue and with the New Equalities Board to make sure that we really are working hard to make sure there is no disadvantage to disabled people and mothers with buggies and fathers with buggies in the city centre.
I'll ensure that the absolute maximum is done.
And I think, actually, Dave, the connection between the Disability Equality Commission and the Transport Board would be one that we'd want to make sure is in place. This is the kind of issue where they can speak.
Work closely together. Rest assured we're on that.
Great. Do you have a second question?
Our second question is really to yourself or to Don and to the Metro Mayor, because obviously we are aware this is a city regions transport fund. So we just want reassurances. There are a number of these bridges that are not fully accessible, which Gordon has been very much looking at. And we want to absolutely make sure that if money is coming from central government through the grant, through the Metro Mayor, that we really not just lift and repair the existing bridges, but we make them fully accessible, and that we work with the Mayor to make sure that happens, the Metro Mayor. So I think we just really want to be sure that piece of work will happen, and the full qualities impact assessment and a step-free entrance is provided across the harbour. As I say, we've got a number of ferry terminals that are accessible, but we have a number that are not, and the ferries are part of the city transport sustainable journey to net zero, which we are fully in support. So just want to make sure this is really fully worked through, because we've not seen any work yet really about making these bridges fully accessible as part of the works, and we believe that should be carried out.
Yeah.
Using the money we've got, which is £540 million from central government.
You're taking back that 20 seconds you got earlier on by having a question as a statement. But there you go. You are Dave Redwell, so we'll allow that. Don?
Yeah, we will obviously, given the historic nature of some of these, and everything goes through our equality inclusion team. I will actually contact Gordon and make sure that he can look over this personally as well. I say we will do our best, but there are going to be some challenges, and I've met regularly with Wapping Wharf, and they've aired those with me very frankly. We're going to do our best, but the most important thing is, I mean, a bridge that's got holes in it would be accessible for nobody, and that's where we're at, is a bridge that is not safe to use, and several other bridges that really need urgent treatment. And so there'll be some short-term pain, but long-term it will mean that we will have good walking and cycling routes, and absolutely as accessible as we can make them within the historic constraints of the historic nature of some of them.
Did you have a supplementary, Dave?
The supplementary would be simple, that can we please bring this to a joint meeting of the Bristol Transport Board and with WECA being present, so we can really go through this issue. We haven't discussed it as a board, and I think it's the access to the harbour and to the ferries and to going beyond to cross the harbour is extremely important to both visitors, tourists and disabled people in the city region.
You can include that within one of the 3 task and finish groups you're on, Dave.
Step-free entrance will do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think now we're moving on to thank you for your contributions. That was it. So actually, do we have a question from Councillor Fodor as well? Oh yeah, Councillor Fodor's not here. Okay. So let's move on to Cabinet. If any Cabinet members want to comment on this, Kai?
come in. Thanks for that, Marvin. Yeah, just want to welcome the report. I think the point's been well made that, I mean, most of this infrastructure is well over 100 years old, some of it Victorian. The reality is, like, work on these structures should have been done decades ago, as you made that point, and it's previous administrations have just kicked the can down the road. And what we've done is we've taken responsibility, and we've got a plan in place now for the structures and bridges across the harbour. It is unfortunate that there's a limited pot of money, because, you know, if we had plenty of money, alternatives like spending 100% of the budget on a temporary bridge in each location, we could have done that. But the reality is we've got a limited pot of money, and we've got a responsibility to maintain the structures. And I think, given the amount of concerns that have been raised about loss of footfall and things like that, it just really demonstrates how important these bridges are. And we probably do need more across the New Cut and the harbour as well going forward in the future. And there are a few ideas sort of floating around certain developments about whether we can get those bridges in place. But thanks, Don, for bringing the report forward.
Thank you, Kai. Any others? No, but I think the point you make there is one that we've often shared, isn't it? It's like the city hasn't been serviced for decades, and suddenly so many things are coming to end of life. But that north-south connectivity is one of those areas in which urgent work is needed all at the same time, at a time when we're facing massive pressures on our finances, but also the cost of construction is going up as well at exactly the wrong time. So it's a perfect storm of challenge, really. Thank you all for your contributions. Thanks for your questions. Let me hand back to you now, Don, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. So on to agenda item 13, conferencing, events and catering contract for museum sites. And Craig, you're bringing this item.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. This is a straightforward paper seeking to extend the concession catering contract in place for the event and conference spaces and cafes at the two main museum sites, Bristol Museum and Art Gallery and the M Shed. While the whole museum service continues to recover from the impact of the pandemic, it felt sensible to extend the catering contract for a further year to allow the event and conferencing function to return to its pre-pandemic levels. Effectively, 14 months of trading was lost when the sites were closed, and trade has not yet reached pre-March 2020 levels. A 12-month extension will allow the business to return to full strength and go to market for the best return at tender. The extension will also allow the council to continue to develop a wider food and beverage contract across all sites.
Thank you, Craig. So we've received one public forum question, no statements. Questions from Councillor Pearce. Councillor Pearce isn't here, so he'll receive his answer in writing. Any other Cabinet members wish to comment? Okay, so let me hand back to you then, Craig, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. Agenda item 14, procurement of laboratory analysis on behalf of Majesty's Senior Coroner for Avon. This is with you as well, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. This is just another item which highlights the sheer breadth of work a local authority is involved in. The procurement of laboratory analysis on behalf of Her Majesty's Senior Coroner for Avon. This paper is self-explanatory in that, as a legal authority, we are undertaking the tendering and procurement process on behalf of Her Majesty's Senior Coroner for Avon for up to 1.6 million for up to 5 years. The contract will be for the laboratory analysis of whole organs, tissue and fluid samples for toxicology, histology, neuropathology, virology and microbiology as part of the determination of the cause of death. What is fascinating and gives us all the opportunity to recognise at this meeting today is that the work goes on as part of this service of autopsy and determining the cause of death, which the paper highlights. We know from the pandemic, but also other work in public health, just how important this can be. Of course, without a procured contract, Bristol City Council would not be able to meet its statutory duties, so I recommend it to Cabinet without further comment.
Thank you, Craig. No public forum for this item. Any Cabinet members wish to comment? I mean, I just think it is worth, again, remembering the breadth of work, as you mentioned at the beginning there, Craig, just the whole range of things that we do as a local authority and have to staff, have to offer expertise and have to spend on. But thank you for what you've done in this area. Let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. So on to 15, agenda item 15, the proposed compulsory purchase of 16 Braithwaite Close and the Gainsborough Public House in Lockleaze. I'm going to bring this report because Tom has given his apologies. So it's a paper that provides an update for Cabinet on our progress with the development of the Branwhite Gainsborough Square scheme in Lockleaze, and it asks for updated approval to pursue the compulsory purchase of the Gainsborough Public House and 16 Branwhite Close. The paper sets out the efforts we have made to date to acquire the pub site and 16 Branwhite Close through negotiation, and sets out our intention to acquire these sites through a compulsory purchase order if there is a failure to acquire by agreement. The scheme presents an opportunity to regenerate this section of Gainsborough Square, which is the commercial centre of Lockleaze. As part of this, planning permission has been approved for 48 new homes with 100% affordable proposed and a majority likely to be new council houses. This continues our progress to deliver 1,000 affordable homes per year, following yesterday's announcement that delivery of affordable homes in the city has hit a 12-year record high. So the opportunity here is for the revitalisation of a part, a long-standing community that for too long has been an eyesore for local residents. New space for business and community use on Gainsborough Square. 48 homes, 100% affordable in the heart of Lockleaze. So there was no public forum. I hope we were going to get something from the councillors for the ward for that, but no public forum for this report. Any Cabinet members wish to comment?
Only to say it's brilliant to see it coming forward. I know it's been long in the making, this, and I know it's been a real problem for local residents there. So it's great to see it finally happening.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Craig. So in terms of the decision to be taken today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report and which will now be displayed on the screen. On to agenda item 16, extension of externally procured IT services contract for the Bottleyard Studios to the 4th contractual year. Craig, this is with you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. This paper is to seek approval for an extension of an existing contract currently providing bespoke IT and telephony services at the Bottleyard Studios to allow for a change in scope to include the new Hawkfield site as that site opens and the team beds in. This paper allows for a procurement of a new contract to be commenced from 2022 to cover both sites. Completion of works and handover to the Bottleyard team is expected in mid-August, with the team moving in almost immediately, and they are on target to launch the new stages later that month.
Thanks, Craig. No public forum for this report. Any Cabinet members wish to comment? Helen?
Well, only just to give it a big hand because it increases the opportunities for people who are in the adjacent ward. I mustn't pretend it's in my ward, but the back door, I think, opens into my ward. So, yes, it's great news.
Thanks, Helen. I agree, and certainly through the mere mention of Bottleyard Studios when we were going through the Channel 4 bid, it was such a big part of our offer, as well as a coherent city approach, I might say. Unity amongst the production companies, and the fact that we are a city that's truly invested in our creative sector. So really important. Any other Cabinet members? I know it's particularly important to you, Helen, on your ward. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your work on this, Craig. Let me hand back to you now to take the decision, which I support, and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just worth sort of reiterating what a success the Bottleyard has been for Bristol overall, and in particular South Bristol and the wards that Helen mentioned. It's providing opportunities for young people in Bristol to really engage in the film and cinema industry generally, as well as just providing a general economic boost for an area and using what was becoming abandoned industrial land, I suppose. So great, it's all good stuff, and these sort of contracts are only there to help support that process. So in terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thanks, Craig. So agenda item 17, electricity contract, procurement and renewals, is with you again.
As people will be aware from their own energy bills, there's been a sharp increase in energy prices, which are even more pronounced for commercial contracts as they don't have a price cap like domestic tariffs. In January, we discussed a paper which looked at our approaches to reducing the costs through different procurement strategies. The principal mechanism is sleeving, which was originally approved by Cabinet in February 2021. This allows the routing of zero-carbon electricity generated from the Council's own renewable energy generation to nominated council sites, along with the new contracting arrangements to recruit local generators to supply additional electricity. The paper explains that as well as reducing the carbon used in our electricity supply, this mechanism also reduces our exposure to electricity market prices by replacing a large element of the Council's grid supply with locally generated sources at a more predictable price. Our electricity contracts all expired on the 31st of March, so an urgent key decision was taken to procure an 18-month flexible contract via a compliant public sector framework covering streetlights and supplies to smaller buildings at a cost of 12 million, and an extension of the half-hourly buildings contract to cover the transition to new arrangements by 2 months at a cost of 1.5 million. This paper is for Cabinet to note that decision in line with the Council's constitutional requirements.
Thanks, Craig, for that. So we've received one public forum question and no statements on this report. First question is from Councillor Mack. We've just discussed your ward and 100% housing. 2 papers ago, though. But there you go, we're here now. Oh, right, okay. It'd be good to talk about it, but there you go. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we're always on YouTube watching if we're not in here. So I was fascinated to learn about the sleeving arrangement. It sounds really sensible and sort of a novel solution to the ridiculous system where our feed-in tariff just isn't what it should be at the moment, and it's much less than the cost of electricity. However, I'm not sure I follow the logic that this system reduces our emissions, as it states in one of the supplementary documents about the environmental impact. As the arrangement doesn't change anything physical, we produce an amount of renewable energy, we use an amount of electricity. I understand that there's lots of things we are doing.
Can you get to the question? It's not a statement. So
yeah.
There are 2 different categories of contribution. All right.
Just need a little explanation. Okay. So how will this decision lead to us saving the 2,700 tonnes of CO2 equivalent a year?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, an energy market expert, so you'll have to forgive my layman terms description of it. I'm definitely not an electrician either. So as I understand it, effectively, at this moment in time, we generate electricity that goes into the grid, and then we draw down electricity from the grid. This new arrangement means that we'll be generating electricity ourselves, which we will then use ourselves, which means that overall our carbon footprint will be reduced by the fact that we know that this is renewable energy rather than energy that's come from the grid.
Do you have a supplementary? Oh, I'll tell you what, why don't you come in off? Yeah, come in now, Kai. Come in now, Kai.
Just say it's quite important as well for the community energy sector as well. So if you look at the proposal in Lawrence Weston and the proposals for community-owned wind turbine, this allows them to sell the electricity direct to us as well, the sleeving agreement, and of course that's zero carbon electricity. So again, if we're using zero carbon electricity, then obviously we're not using electricity produced by fossil fuels. So there's obviously a saving there if we then use that sleeving agreement to use the locally generated renewable energy.
And we attribute that to the grid. So we replace essentially what we take from the carbon associated with that is less than the carbon associated with grid energy. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Mack.
I think what I'm trying to understand is there less carbon produced and put into the atmosphere, or is it just that we are accounting differently because we have the same amount of renewable energy, electricity being produced, the wind turbine, nothing's changing there, and we are using the same amount of electricity. So is it that we are accounting for that carbon differently, or is it that there is less carbon being produced by the energy production?
Yeah, I get that, and I think that's the point I was trying to make, probably badly, was that we now know that the electricity we've generated is the electricity we're using, and we know that what the carbon generated by that is. So we can say for definite that we're now using less carbon-based or carbon-generating energy than we were previously. So nationally, has it changed the nation's amount of carbon? No. Does it mean that the council is using less? Yes, probably. Yeah. Well, yes, definitely by 2007.
That's it. Right. Thanks a lot. It was good to look for a dark line into a silver cloud, eh? But there you go. So Thank you very much. Any Cabinet members like to comment on this one? No, well, I mean, I'd just like, well, Craig, for you and the team, and Kai, the work that's doing now, and what Nicola have been working on with our environment team, with our energy team, and with our city partners has been just outstanding. And is one of those things that means that we are a city that's being called on to be held up as a real flagship on areas from climate change to migration, and beyond. So, it's a real, strong piece of work for us to be proud of, not least by the fact that it really backs, it builds the market for local community groups as well. When we think about groups like Ambition and Lance Western as well. So we're building that market for local energy, which is not just about energy, but it's about empowerment of our community-based organisations as well. So let me thank you for your contributions. Cabinet notes the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. Okay, so agenda item 18, Household Support Fund 2022, including Easter holidays, free school meals vouchers. This is with you again, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. Following the Chancellor's spring statement in March, it was announced that there will be a doubling of the Household Support Fund to support those most in need with the cost of food, energy and water bills and other essential household items for the period April to September 22. Bristol was awarded just over £4 million to assist low-income families in need with the cost of living crisis. Eligibility criteria dictates that a minimum of a third of funding must be ring-fenced to support households with children, a third to pensioners, and the final third to be used to fund other households genuinely in need of support. The proposed spend is contained within Appendix A of the report. 1.347 million to be spent on supporting pensioners with fuel poverty with additions to the council tax energy rebate scheme. 2.31 million to be spent on free school meals to children to provide support over the Easter, May and summer bank holidays. A further 100,000 to assist those without recourse to public funds. 38,000 to assist care leavers and 33,000 to assist older people via Age UK. The remainder is to be spent in respect of associated administration costs. The recommendation is that Cabinet note the urgent key decision and approve the Household Support Fund policy and any procurement necessary to ensure delivery.
Thanks again, Craig. You've had a lot of papers today. So thank you. So we've received one statement, 2 public forum questions on this report. Statement is from Jen Smith. No. Okay. First question from Councillor Pearce, who I know isn't here, so we'll respond to Councillor Smith in writing. The second question is from Councillor Grant. No. So we've got one councillor here at the moment, or 2 councillors here. Okay. Okay, no supplementary. So can I just offer it to any other Cabinet members who'd like to speak to this item? I mean, I just pick out...
If I could, Marvin, at some point. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, Don.
Yeah.
You're on the back. We've got to get you on one of these front rows. Okay. Carry on, please.
No, just to say, this support is really, really important. I mean, what we're doing in my ward at the moment is we are actually doing some asset mapping of the food clubs and the holiday hunger and all the other things that have, not because of me, sprouted up over the last 2-3 years. And they're based in sports clubs, and they're based in community, they're based in after-school clubs. And what surprises me is the level of sophistication of their thinking about how they can help the families not just feed the children, give away free food, but actually support the families in a wider sense. And also they're linking in with Fair Share and with the local food banks. And it's really quite impressive. So pay tribute to all residents really who are getting about that work, and absolutely want to applaud this support. It's a large amount of money, but actually in terms of what it's generating, once it empowers people to do their own thing out in the communities, I think it's incredibly important at this time. There's a kind of ecosystem building up in my ward, which you kind of wish wasn't there, but the fact that it is there now means that other benefits are coming off, and I hope when the government gets its act together, we'll still have these benefits will still be there.
Yeah, Helen?
Well, like Don and Craig, I really welcome this report, and it really highlights how important it is that we've continued to fund the council tax reduction scheme, because that complements this support for those in greatest need. But while it is a large amount of money, we know that there's even worse demands on people coming down the track with energy prices in particular. And we need to carry on pressing government to support those most vulnerable people. When you hear stories about people using their bus pass to ride on the buses all day to keep themselves warm, or taking their family to the library to do their homework because they can't afford to heat the house or the flat, then we know that this is a situation that's unprecedented, really, and we just need to carry on keeping that pressure on government to fund us.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. So, I mean, it's worth just using this opportunity to mention a little bit about what we're doing as a city in the face of the cost of living crisis. So, I mean, we should, as a council, we should be all over this paper at this moment, right time, using it for platforms to speak into our city priorities. But we know that we have a crisis right here, right now, that we're trying to get on top of. This will be part of that immediate response. Ellie's been there as well, been meeting with community development workers from right across Bristol. And we kind of have a two-stage plan that we're developing. One is, what do we do right here, right now, in the face of the challenges we face? But we also need to, but if there is any blessing at this moment in time, is that this current hike in prices comes when people don't need to put their heating on. We know that come October, people will need to put their heating on again. So we need to be able to move into another gear, certainly by late September, early October, to support people when the heating needs to go back on. So we're looking at what we can do with existing resource, with our community development team who now sit in public health. We're looking at who's doing what, where, with who, around advice, around frontline community workers and all those community-based organisations that are out there. We're looking at what additional benefit we can get from being more joined up, more coordinated across existing provision. But at the same time, there is no substitute for getting adequate finance, because this is a cost of living crisis. It is a price of living, a financial crisis facing our families. And not just families, households in general, with a single or family. So this is something that we're going to have to continue to press government on. Through our core cities network, when we think about what cities need to be, which is another piece of work we've initiated, one of the areas that will come up will be how we support our city families to transition through, one, the immediate crisis they're facing, but also the economic restructuring that needs to come about as we decarbonise the economy as well, without people falling further behind. And when we talk about the transition to net zero, we talk about the investment needed. We are talking about the investment needed in the physical stuff, but we're talking about the investment needed in people's lives, so that they're in a better place to be able to go through that transition. And the beginning of that investment in people's lives starts with supporting people through this immediate cost of living crisis. So we are really, at the moment, really trying to push on all fronts to make sure we have the support we need to be able to support our populations. I think that's everything now. So let me hand back to you now, Craig, unless there are any other comments, to take the decision which I support and will be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. And just worth stressing again that this, however hard this year's budget setting process was, and however many difficult decisions had to be made, we did fully protect the council tax reduction scheme, and we did fully protect the local crisis prevention fund, which is another way that we support people with difficult emergency drags on their finance. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the reports.
Thanks, Craig. So agenda item 19, Corporate Risk Management Report, Q4. And this is with you again.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. This report outlines the Council's risks for Q4 and achieving the key objectives and aims we set out as an organisation. This quarter, there are two critical threat risks: failure to deliver enough affordable homes to meet the city's need, and increased costs and difficulty placing cover for high-risk properties, a new critical risk for Q4. In addition, risk ratings have improved in one threat risk and one opportunity risk. Two threat risks have deteriorated and one threat risk has de-escalated to be managed at a directorate level. Actions are being taken against all our risks to reduce their impact and likelihood to a tolerable level, and full details on all are provided within the report. And I know that Cabinet members will be all over theirs in their directorates. It's just for noting, so please recommend it.
Thank you. We received one public forum question and no statements on this report. First question from Councillor Grant. I think we've already established isn't here. Any Cabinet members wish to comment on this item? It's just the case, isn't it? Just keep monitoring how we are or are not doing on our key priority areas. So Cabinet notes the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. Okay, agenda item 20, P12 Finance Exception Report. Craig, this is with you also.
The finance team is currently in the process of finalising the 2021-2022 financial outturn position, and this will be reported to the Cabinet meeting in June. The June Cabinet report will also set out proposals for the reporting timetable for the 2022-2023 financial year. Cabinet is asked to note the position with regard to the points included in the report. This includes information about the council tax rebate and discretionary fund policy. In February, the Government announced a package of support for households to help with rising energy costs, and that households liable for council tax in bands A to D will receive a payment of £150 via council tax rebate. In addition, discretionary funding of £961,200 has been provided to Bristol to deliver further support to local households. This report provides details for Cabinet to note of the policy for allocating this funding that has been decided under delegated authority given by full council. This report also includes an end-of-year summary of the various business support grants that have been received over the past year and the payment of these to businesses, as well as the 2021-2022 Business Improvement District funding allocations that have been made. Cabinet is asked to note this position.
Thank you, Craig. No public forum for this item. Cabinet members? No? Okay, thank you. So, look, Cabinet notes the reports, the recommendations are set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. That's the end of today's Cabinet meeting. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'm just going to add again. It is good to attend Cabinet meetings. There are lots of important papers coming through, and to participate in them, to have something to say about the papers that are coming through, and actually to have conversations before the papers come as well, would probably be good for Bristol City Council. But if we're not taking the opportunities that are there, then obviously that's going to be a bit of a challenge. And this has been a point we've been making for some years now, and it doesn't seem to get any better. But let's hope things can get better over the remaining 2 years of this administration. So the date of the next Cabinet meeting is Tuesday, the 7th of June. So I may see people there. Thank you very much. Take care.